Good morning, Puckheads. It's your buddy ChopTalk coming at you with another episode of Chop Talk, brought to you by the one, the only DFSArmy.com, your one-stop shop for all things DFS from, and these are just the sports we're running today: NFL Week 7, NBA opening night, NHL, PGA, and of course all the other sports that you know, you love, you like to play in DFS. That's what we do. We are a coaching site. We are a content and a tools developed site that allows you all of the information in one place to become a better player and actually ask questions and get feedback in real time from people who play the games and have been down the train track a little bit further than you most likely, and can help you become a better player by focusing on bankroll, contest selection, general lineup, fundamental construction, building type processes. All these things come together to make this the greatest community in DFS. You'll find a link to the VIP program down there in the comment section of the video. You will also find a coupon code for 10% off, CHOP, C-H-O-P, Friends Don't Let Friends Pay Retail. What we're going to do today is dive into a little bit of NHL. We'll come back a little bit later and start talking Week 7 in the NFL. Today is a huge slate. And to do that, we need to spread out. Now, if you're playing GPPs, of course, you're going to target a few games, matchups that you like. You may like Carolina. You may like, Pittsburgh. You may like New Jersey tonight. Whatever the case may be, you're going to find a couple of those lines. You're going to stack them up. And then from there, you're going to take your shots. But you're going to realize that in a fluky game like hockey, Arizona might score 6 tonight. Vegas might score 5 tonight. And that combo of the Arizona 3 and the Vegas 2 might be the winning combo of the night. There's no way to predict that, and there's no way to know that. What we're generally trying to do is pick offenses in good spots, find the production within those offenses, throw them out there, take our best shot, and realize that on any given night, shit happens. Last night, I can tell you, I focused on Dallas. I focused on Toronto. It was a 4-game slate. Those were the best paper spots. Little bit of Montreal. Looked great going against Detroit. And the next thing, you're like, these cash lineups are kind of building themselves with the value that's out there. A little bit of Brady Tkachuk on Ottawa, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, you know what? The one game nobody's talking about, the one game nobody's mentioning is Nashville, Minnesota. What if instead of going Rinne, which everybody was going to probably do, Rinne or Niemi, what if I just went over to Niemi, got the hell out of that game completely, and then stacked up being on the road, the Minnesota 2, because generally they match up against the less defensive home team's number 1 line being on the road. So let's run Minnesota 2, let's turn around, and let's run the Nashville 1, and let's see if that game doesn't get funky and shoot out. On a 4-game slate, very easy to bet against the chalk. Go where nobody's talking about. And in hockey, it'll happen a few times a year. What happened last night? 9,500 person GPP. The lineup I put together was good for 11th place. So it's just kind of funny how that stuff works out. And it's just kind of funny how hockey tends to, you've got to, hockey, I said this out on Twitter the other day, hockey's like marriage. You've got to get used to being wrong because you're just going to be wrong a lot in hockey. It's a volatile sport, but what you're hoping is that when you're right, you're really right, like 11th place out of 9,500 people, and you make a decent amount of bank. You bring home the bacon and live to fight several bad days. That's what we try to teach inside DFS Armies, how to get into those spots, how to take a contrarian hedge lineup, throw it in GPPs that might save your night, all of those types of principles through conversation, getting to know each other back and forth. This stuff will all come out. It isn't a 1-week process, a 2-week process. This takes sometimes months, takes a couple of different sports and seasons and whatnot, and that's why we hope that our members become long-term members and stick around, because learning hockey will make your NFL game better, and learning baseball will make your basketball game better. It just goes round the clock year round. Tonight, if we look at the Vegas lines and we start there, what we're going to find is that Dallas is on a back-to-back, a road back-to-back at that, 3rd game in 4 nights. They should be a little bit tired with the travel. New Jersey is actually in a pretty decent spot. Vegas has them as a minus 140. You can see the line moving in Vegas's way from where it opened to where it is now, and you can see them betting on the over, which is interesting because New Jersey suppresses shots. They're the 31st ranked team in goals against, meaning they are the best at preventing goals. 28th ranked in shots allowed against, which means they're 3rd best in shots allowed. So I'm not real hip to a tired Dallas team going in it. Now, for GPPs, play Dallas. Why? Oppo Chapo. It's a thing. When I sit around and I turn around and say, hey, okay, this team sucks and this team's in a horrible just go play them. Just throw them in a lineup and watch me be wrong. It happens all the time. But New Jersey right now is scoring second most goals per game in the league. They are allowing the least. They are shooting the 12th most, and they're allowing the third least shots against. That all matches up to a tired Dallas team coming in on the road, New Jersey being at home. It matches up to a very good night for their most productive line, their top line. But off that top line, I don't see Taylor Hall yet. I don't see some of these guys coming around. I see Palmieri hot as hell, and I see Vatanen pretty cheap. And Vatanen, when we look into the research station here and dig in, if we get time, you'll see that that Vatanen's priced up on DraftKings. He's more expensive on DraftKings than he is on Fanduel, which typically means DraftKings finds him in a better spot. Fanduel adjusts its price a little bit slower. DraftKings goes a little bit more based on matchups. When I see a guy suddenly priced above his Fanduel price over on DraftKings, I take him over on Fanduel because he's a value there, he's a bargain there, he's cheaper there. That's my tip to you. When I look at the Florida and the Philadelphia game, I see a minus 130 coming down to more of a 50-50 type of shot. 6 betting on the over. The over's getting a little bit stronger. That's good movement to see in that direction. So I don't mind either one of these two teams. When I look at their shots, I'm looking at Florida, 25th in goals. That's not great. They're 19th in shots. Or I'm sorry, 19th in goals against. They're 4th in shots. If you're pumping 4th most shots in the league on a per game basis, and you're only scoring the 25th in goal, you're due for some positive goal regression. I don't mind. If I can see some indicators that Philly's not great defensively, like I look at their goals, they're only the 16th goal scoring team, but I look goals against, they're 4th. That's a good sign. 4th means they allow the 4th most goals against in the league right now. Philly's given up goals. If Florida is due positive regression in the goal scoring area because they're shooting a ton and they're not getting the results, it's a good spot to bank on. They're not hot yet. They're not running hot yet. They're not producing yet, but it's a good spot to bank on a little bit of aggression. When you're banking on something, you say, well, if, that's a GPP spot. Florida may or may not be cash safe tonight, depending on how much they're shooting and what their floors look like and how suppressed their prices are, but they are a GPP line tonight. That top Florida line is pretty darn good, and they're worth a stack, as well as some of the defenders. You know, your Yandles, Ekblads, whatever, are worth a little bit of stack consideration tonight. Philly on the comeback is actually kind of worth it a little bit too. They're not showing the numbers. They're 16th in goals 4. They're 11th in shots 4. You're not seeing a lot of that stuff really indicating good spots for Philly going up against Florida. But the Philly 1 has been producing. The Philly 1 top line has been one of the better producing lines around the league based on what we have tonight. So it's not the worst scenario for them. In cash games, again, I like to look, and I'll show you when I get to line analysis. I like to spread out a little bit. I don't really stack lines 1, 2, 3, or take one guy, 2 guys, and the defender. I kind of keep it to about 2 guys. I want to try and target, instead of just 2 offenses or 3 really, really hard, I'd rather target 3 offenses or maybe 5 with some of their best pieces or some of their hottest pieces spread out a little bit on a bigger slate like this, not get overexposed to a game that could wind up going 2-1 and be largely be a dud. Colorado and New York Rangers, we'll skip down here. Colorado and the New York Rangers, you see the minus 125 growing to a minus 135. The plus 105 to plus 115 is getting a little bit worse. Colorado's being favored out on the road. It's leaning to the under, but not by much. That minus 10 is basically a pick 'em. So 6 is about where the total's going to stay. Colorado's got some decent scores. However, did you know that their most productive players are actually down there on their third line? Barry's priced up on DK. Soderberg's priced up on DK. I don't mind Vatanen on that top line to get some exposure to a Nathan MacKinnon, but Nathan MacKinnon may not be the better value in that 8K range in centers tonight over on FanDuel. I would almost rather see these guys, take some of the cheaper, hotter guys. If you're going to need some value at some point in this lineup, that might not be a bad place to consider taking it. Colorado's scoring the 8th most goals in the league, so top 10. They're shooting 14th most, so middling, but top half. New York is allowing the 9th most goals against, so top 10, bottom 10, however you want to call it. Defensively, they're giving up some goals. You got a team coming in that's scoring goals pretty well, fairly consistently, and they're going up against a team that's allowing goals fairly consistently. It's a good spot. It's a good spot for the Colorado 1. You want to stack it up. I'm not going to complain. I would almost rather go with the cheaper guys that are running hot than paying the premium prices. That would afford me an opportunity to stay with the hotter production inside that team, but then get out and go to the pricier production, in a Pittsburgh, which is the next game we're going to come across. Vancouver's in a sneaky spot tonight. And here's why. This is really interesting. Pittsburgh's a minus 230, growing to a minus 240, and the 6.5 is leaning to the under. The 6.5 is a big total in hockey. So we're leaning towards the under, but we're playing massive fair. So that means that your goalie, Pittsburgh's goalie, when he gets confirmed, is going to be pretty chalky. People are going to really lean on it. You're going to see that minus 230. They're really going to bank on it. So you can really fuck some people by taking Vancouver when it makes sense, because not only is the Pittsburgh goalie maybe going to give up some goals and take the loss, Vancouver's going to be doing the damage. And nobody plays Vancouver, especially on the road. Vancouver is scoring the 9th most goals in the league. How about that? Top 10. Pittsburgh is never a defensive-oriented team. They're giving up the 3rd most goals against. So when I've got a top 10 team, just like the last scenario, a top 10 team scoring goals coming into a team that's given up goals, I think that the only 2 teams that are worse in giving up goals against, well, I know Detroit's one. We saw what happened to them last night. When you've got a team like Pittsburgh, it's giving up goals on the back end. That puts the opposing team in a good spot, and that would be Vancouver tonight. At a minus 240 favorite, you've got a really, really good chance at screwing the chalk over here. Now you turn around, 29th in shots, so they're not scoring, not shooting a ton in Vancouver, but Pittsburgh is giving up the 4th most shots against. So we got a positive matchup boost here. We're giving up a lot of shots against. We got a team that's not really shooting a lot, but they are scoring, so they are directing pucks towards the net in high-quality areas, and they're going to get a little bit of a shot boost. I do like Vancouver tonight, and I never take Vancouver on the road. Never. But I actually like them tonight. That's an interesting spot. However, on the road, a lot of times the second line matches up against the top line of the opposing team. Because again, home ice advantage. The home ice, the home team, when they shift on the fly, when they change lines, the visiting team throws their line out there first, the home team gets to react. So in a lot of cases, they want their ones going up against the opposing 2 because it's the lesser skilled players. But really that has a reverse benefit a lot of times in the visiting team's 2 going up against the 1 is going to get the lesser defensive team because they're so offensive minded on that top scoring line. They don't play a lot of defense. That's great in this situation because Vancouver 2 is the hot line. You want a value stack? You take Vancouver 2 up against the Pittsburgh goalie. You anti-stack the chalk. You go oppo-choppo. You turn around and you put yourself actually in a good spot. So in terms of paper matchups, it's a very, very strong matchup tonight. It just so happens it gains a ton of leverage on the rest of the world when you do it. So what have I got so far? I've got Palmieri and Vatanen. I've maybe got a little Florida and Philly. And then I've got the Vancouver 2 maybe stacked. When everybody else is going, I'm not saying Pittsburgh's not going to score. I'm saying Vancouver might. And that would be a very, very advantageous scenario for you in DFS if you can pull that one off. Pittsburgh 2, Pittsburgh 1, great. And on the Vancouver side also, the Vancouver top line's a liability defensively right now. That puts the Pittsburgh 2 in good spot. If the Pittsburgh 1 goes against the Vancouver 2, then the Pittsburgh 2 is going to go against the Vancouver 1. And Pittsburgh 2 has Malkin on it. And the Pittsburgh 2 is in a good spot to turn around and take advantage of the liability. You got a sneaky shootout. Edler's priced up on DK for Vancouver, so he's another defensive lock that you might want to look at. High floor, high shots, high blocks, participates on the power play. And you're going to end up getting a little bit of overlap time with that Vancouver 2. If you took a couple of skaters off the Vancouver 2, threw them in there with Edler, you got yourself a pretty interesting shot. If you get lucky, you got a good floor. You're spread out across a couple of lines with some good spread, but you've also got yourself a scenario now where you just might overlap, and get Edler to throw a puck up to the front line guys on the Vancouver 2, and they end up scoring. And you get both. You get a little bit of stacking correlation going with you too. Another game people are going to want to talk about: Carolina and Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, the minus 180s dropped to a 160. The under has flipped to an over though, at 6. It's interesting. If I scroll across here, I don't really see a lot when it comes to going to a 6.5, maybe leaning that direction. But we are growing. The 6 under went to a 6 over, slightly different favorite. We got a casino or 2 offering the 6 over to minus 120, which is a little bit stronger indicator. We've got him 165, indicating that this thing isn't quite coming down as fast as we'd like to see. But it's evening out. That means Carolina's getting put in a little bit better spot. We're leaning towards the over. Now, we know Tampa Bay has been off to a little bit of a slow start. They're allowing the 26th most goals against, or fewest goals against. They're not allowing a lot of goals. They're not scoring a lot, though, 14th in goals for. But what I'm seeing in Carolina is 7th in goals for, so top 10 going up against, a tougher defensive team, but a hot offense is a hot offense, and I see them shooting the most pucks towards the net, putting the most pucks on goal, where Tampa Bay gives up the 8th most. So that's a positive bump where we should see an indication we should see Carolina shooting or tallying more shots on goal. The more shots we put on the net, the more chances we have to bang them in. And we've got a top 10 team in goals per game in Carolina. So that's a good sign for Carolina. Carolina 1, 2, and 3 are all in play. Carolina 1 has, your Aho and your Stahl is an overlap here. I'll actually show you that now. When I dip over here, starting lineups, run down to Carolina. And Fegley's cheap, top line production, no power play, but people probably run to him because he's cheap. Stahl is producing. He's in a good spot. Williams, not so much, but he's okay. When I look down here at Aho, so I got to go double center with Aho and Stahl. Teravainen and Ferland. Ferland is priced up on DraftKings. So if I ran Ferland, Aho, Stahl, now what I've wound up doing is I've overlapped Stahl and Aho on different scoring lines, but they're in the power play 1. Ferland is down here stacked with Aho on the second line. He gets a little bit of power play 2 exposure. So now what I have is 2 lines of scoring. I've focused my energies here on the second line, which should match up against the top line, the defensive liability of the Tampa Bay Lightning, if we generally go by that home road, home ice advantage, line shift advantage type of scenario. We've got the 2 going up against the 1 on the road, and we've got a little bit of power play 1 overlap down here with a hot producing center in Jordan Stahl. So now basically we've overlapped, we've spread ourselves out a little bit in a situation again where we're shooting the most pucks in the league per game, and we're scoring the 7th most goals per game, and we're going up against a team that is off to a little bit of a slower start. That's how you tip these scales in your advantage. When I run down to, again, Aho, Stahl, Ferland, stack them. You could run Williams in there with them. You could run Fegley in there with them if you wanted to, but I would prefer the other 3 first because they're the ones that spread me out. They're the ones that get me the better line combinations and give me a higher floor in a very, very volatile sport like hockey where they're all liable to crap the bed anyway. If I drop down next, Arizona, Minnesota, minus 160 in Minnesota. Minnesota's back-to-back as well. I mean, they're going back home. They were in Dallas last night, but they're on a back-to-back. They should be a little bit tired. They do get Dubnyk in goal because they rested him last night, which was probably a pretty smart move. But you're looking at a game with 5.5 leaning to the under. A lot of people are going to be on Minnesota here. I'm not a big fan of the back-to-back game. I don't like Arizona when they travel well. They don't travel all that well either. They've got home and road splits. But watch this. Arizona, of course, scoring the least amount of goals in the league. But they're pumping the 6th most shots on goal. So again, we got a scenario where they're not scoring at all, but they're pumping a lot of shots on goal. Positive regression should be somewhere in the near future. What if it happens tonight? Now see, what if, again, GPP scenario, but what if it happens tonight? Minnesota is allowing the 11th most goals against. So they're kind of like worst half, bottom half defensively. That's not a bad scenario, again, for a team that isn't scoring but is shooting a ton going up against a team that is allowing some goals. Minnesota allows the most shots on goal per game in the league. So that's a bump for a team that's already shooting the puck like crazy. It's a very intriguing spot for an Arizona. It could be a sneaky spot. A lot of people are going to lean on Dubnyk. A lot of people are going to lean on Minnesota skaters. And if this game ends up going 3-1 Arizona, it wouldn't shock me. And if it goes 3-1 Arizona and you're sitting there with the line that does the damage, which doesn't really, there's no line doing damage right now because they score the least goals in the league. But you end up picking the right line in a GPP or something like that second line, or maybe just go with their studs. Boom. you've got yourself a possible GPP line that is very, very low owned that gets you right up the leaderboards if it goes off. God forbid you end up with a stack slam, which is when you stack 3 guys and you get both assists and the goal. Vault right up the leaderboard you'll go. I'm not on Minnesota all that much tonight because, again, the back-to-back bit. People are going to be just thinking it's a slam dunk. And they may win the game. It may be 2-1, 3-2, 4-3, 4-2. It may go 4-0 and a shutout for Minnesota. I don't really know. But I'm saying that if we ran this slate 100 times, Arizona would perform better than you would think. And that's all the edge, all the bump I need to turn around and say, they might be worth a shot. So now we come down to Buffalo and Vegas, and we can't skip over the Winnipeg game. But Buffalo and Vegas, well, yeah, we can. Let's cover it really quick. Hellebuyck's probably in play, minus 200, 6 leaning to the under. You're looking at 2 teams that aren't scoring a lot of goals. Edmonton's ranked 30th, Winnipeg's ranked 27th. You're 2 teams that aren't shooting a ton. Edmonton ranked 30th, Winnipeg ranked 20th. So we're not shooting a lot, we're not scoring a lot. It's really kind of a bunch of just, it's not great. No team has really given up a lot against either, so it's kind of one of those games where it might, and I can see why it's leaning to the under. On a game like this, we got 8-game slate tonight. It's not one I'm interested in. There you have it, and there you are. Buffalo and Vegas is interesting for one reason only. Vegas is shooting middle of the road, 13th. Buffalo's given up a lot of shots against. Ranked in the top 5 or 6th, I guess. Vegas plays a little bit better at home. They've been off to for a slow start. I'm not sure how I like this game ranked in with these others that I'm focused on, but I could be convinced that the top Vegas line is not bad. If they're smart and they try to actually use their home ice advantage to line up against the Buffalo 1 when they're out there, Buffalo 1 is their liability. I don't know that they will do that because, again, they usually don't. But if they match that up that way, then Vegas 1 becomes in a very, very good spot. They're the most consistent scorers of the bunch, the ones that are doing it, but Vegas is like 3rd worst in the league in goals scored right now. They're not a hot offense. They're not showing signs of getting hot. This would be kind of one of those flyers that you take that you're just holding on to last year, and you're hoping against hope that they kind of come back tonight. I'm not really on any of those later games. If I was to pick on offenses tonight, I would pick on New Jersey. I would pick on Vancouver, believe it or not. Maybe some Colorado, maybe some Pittsburgh. I'd pick on Carolina. Tournament shot on Arizona. And that's probably about it. In those lines, I'd pick on the Carolina 1, the Pittsburgh 2, the Vancouver 1. So I'd wind up rostering some of those. I'd pick on the Vancouver 1, meaning I'd roster the Vancouver 2. So let me run that down again. Here's who I would look to stack. Here's who I would look to try to target skaters within. The New Jersey 1, maybe the Florida or Philly 1, the Colorado 1, the Vancouver 2, the Pittsburgh 2, and the Carolina 1, 2, or 3. Those are primarily where I'm going. Maybe outside shot at Arizona, maybe outside shot at Vegas 1. That's typically where I'm headed. I'm looking at the guys that are priced up on DraftKings. I'm looking at Vatanen in New Jersey. I'm looking at Soderberg and Barry in Colorado. I'm looking at Edler in Vancouver. I'm looking at Ferland in Carolina. And the only stack that I really like, that I really think has good chances for cash games is Aho, Stahl, and Ferland. I could run some Soderberg Barry with it. I could run some Palmieri Vatanen with it, and those would all be fine little mini stacks. But the only 3-person stack I'd really be interested in is Aho, Stahl, and Ferland, and it costs me both my centers. So bottom line's the bottom line, guys. You're going to have to jump in there. If you like pretty colors and things, and I didn't use those this time, but I'm still waiting for these last 10 games and stuff to build up. But you've got line combinations now, too, where you've got shots on goal and block shots on floor. I tend to use left wing lock right now, early in the season. You can run through our skaters tab and get a lot of the similar type of information. When you sort these out by projections and you sort them out by shots on goal and block shots in the last 10 games over here, you can sort it out by shots per game. But I tend to use just team generalizations right now. So I'm using a lot of left wing lock going back 10 games, and I'm looking at what lines are producing, what lines are giving up goals. You can see that's what I was looking at last. And these are lines that when they play tonight, I want to target with the opposing line. And I want that opposing line to be running hot as well. That's the way I see things. But I'm going to also discount things when I see stuff like this. I see Ben Sagan and Radulov. I might do a Radulov if he's on the top line as a one-off only, but I don't trust 3 games and 4 nights road back-to-backs. That's a letdown spot. So even though Dallas is in a pretty good spot, they're going to trip your trigger on paper. See, and I think that's what's going to happen tonight. I think what we're going to see is a good bit of Dallas. I think we're going to see a good bit of Pittsburgh. I think we're going to see a good bit of Minnesota, and I think those are mistakes. I think it's actually the other team that you should be looking at. I think you should be looking at New Jersey. I think you should be looking at Vancouver, and I think you should be looking possibly at Arizona. And that sounds really crazy, and I'm the only person in the industry that's going to be talking about it today, especially Arizona. But, last time we went Oppo Chapo last night, we finished 11th out of 9,500 people. So can we do it back-to-back? Probably not. Let's be realistic. But stranger shit happens. If you guys are interested in this type of information, you want to talk hockey with us all day long, of course, you jump into the VIP program at dfsarmy.com. You hit the link in the comments section down there. Spread the love, man. Like, subscribe to the channel. You'll get this. You'll get some NFL, and I make no promises, but you might get some sneaky NBA stuff if I start learning the game again. I'm not the best. We've got some really, really good coaches, 4, 5, 6 of them. We're kicking off our NBA coverage tonight on the 2-game slate. We're going all full bore tomorrow with the 11-game slate. I'm going to be promoting NBA because it is perhaps the most predictive DFS sport there is, and a lot of people love it as their number 2 sport. But what I'm telling you is, if we get into it and if we learn it again, what we'll do is we'll learn it together out here on YouTube. I wrote it the very, very first year that DFS Army was covering it to help the guys out. Learned it by the end of the year. As actually was pretty decent, but that's been 3 years. So given as is, I can write anything, talk anything. You follow me, you know what I'm talking about. But I do enjoy the likes. I like the subscribes. I love it when you guys retweet me, share me out on Twitter. That's one of the best compliments you could possibly pay me. Of course, the best compliment you could pay me is join the VIP program and use the code CHOP, C-H-O-P, for the 10% off. You guys, this is Chop-A-Dong. It's been Chop Talk. We'll come back later today or tomorrow with our Wishbone Talk, our NFL Week 7 first glance. And we'll just take it from there. We'll see where the rest of the week goes. We've got hockey, NBA, and NFL all rolling at the same time now. It's a very, very busy time to be a DFS fan. So hopefully you're all subscribed up on your DirecTV and Dish Network packages, or you're doing the Reddit streams or whatever, and you're ready to rock and roll when it comes to watching the sports that you love and putting a little bit of money on them too. I'm Chop-A-Dong. I'm out under 30 minutes today. Full slate breakdown for hockey. Come and see me at dfsarmy.com, guys. We will talk to you tomorrow.